And I will mute myself after I finish speaking. In the meantime, you'll have to listen to the dings as people continue to join. So today, June the 30th, 2022, our speakers are Chloe Ireland Fish. I think Chloe has transitioned as KVC has done some specialization over the years. I remember when Chloe started at KVC and I just called her a regular case manager, but now I make sure to introduce her to put on your sign-in sheets that she's an adoption specialist. So she has that special caseload, but also kids without that as a case plan, as I'm sure she and Kirsten will explain. Also present today from her home in Kansas City is Kirsten Reed, adoption supervisor for our area. One of a couple of people that supervise the workers in our area, and I'm sure she'll explain more about that as well. I'll go ahead and mute myself, and Chloe's going to take over the screen with her PowerPoint, so I'll defer to her if I think I can unmute myself, but we'll find out.
Awesome, thank you. Let's get the screen shared. So my name is Chloe Ireland Fish. I have been with KVC for 6 years in July. I am currently an adoption specialist. I have been doing that since 2017. Kirsten Reed is one of the supervisors for the adoption team. The other supervisor is Rachel Rennie, and she is currently on maternity leave. I'm not great at presenting, so I will do my best. But yeah, I'm gonna try to give you guys as much information as possible. So this training is just regarding the adoption side of KVC and things that our team does. All right, so how many adoption specialists carry cases in Douglas County? The adoption case team has workers for Johnson and Douglas County. Right now, 4 of us have cases in Douglas County. Myself, Caitlin Boyd, Monique Clay, and Kara Friedley. There are many other adoption team members that only have Johnson County cases. I have both Johnson and Douglas County cases. How many adoption supervisors are there in Douglas County? Do they also supervise workers in other counties? So like I was saying, Rachel Rennie and Kirsten Reed are the adoption supervisors in Johnson and Douglas County, and they supervise workers in both counties. So comparing the caseloads between adoption specialists and permanency, 15 is the goal, and for adoption 25 is the goal, but it is currently I have 29 on my caseload. The reason adoption has more is because we don't deal with biological parents, so we don't do parent-child visits normally, so that takes less time in essence. So regarding adoption and APLA assigning caseloads, if the case plan goal is changed from reintegration straight to APLA, adoption will not take that case. But if the case plan goal is changed from reintegration to adoption, then we will get the case. And if a resource cannot be located as the child gets older, then the case will be changed to APLA, and we will keep those cases. Cases are assigned based on caseload sizes that we currently have, not based on if we think it will change to APLA or not. So routine work that we do that some people might not have any idea that we do are, as mentioned, checking local jails and KDOC for parents and looking for obituaries, taking children to and from appointments and visits, extra family finding through social media, extra time with youth who need support, like shopping for apartment items, looking for housing and lease information, vehicles, insurance, bank account, the care portal request, where go into the warehouse to see if there are any clothing items that a youth could use, storing the youth's items. We spend a lot of extra time with kids that I think people don't always realize.
Chloe, this is Heather.
Yes.
Could you tell us more about the care portal and the warehouse?
Yes. So care portal is a thing that we can use to request items like beds, a safe, gift cards, and those requests are sent out to local churches in the area to see if we can find a volunteer to do that. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that great. Kirsten, do you have a better explanation for the care portal?
No, you're exactly right. We can enter a need, when we need it, what the cost might be, whether they could, in what form they could provide that. And then that goes out. And then if a church is able to meet that need and pick up that certain need that we're needing for a family, then they let us know and we kind of coordinate with them. It's just one other resource that we have for community partners and some of those needs. But that was great.
Awesome. Yes. In our warehouse, we have a big warehouse in Johnson County in Olathe where we can store youth items. And also that is where we take our donations and where our donations are stored. So things like clothes, shoes, toys, beds, anything that anyone can donate gets stored there. And probably monthly, we have a Saturday out of the month where foster homes can come in and get items for their foster kids or relatives. And we have a very small warehouse in Lawrence in our office. I would consider it more of a ware closet than a warehouse.
Thanks, Chloe.
And then just to add on the care portal, it's not available in all areas. And then it isn't something where we could ask for it multiple times. It's just one method of trying to meet some of those unique needs and partnering with churches to try and meet that.
Some examples of things that I have requested over the care portal are a dresser, a TV, a safe, plates, bowls, cups, silverware, a lot of independent living items that kids need, and things that kids might need if they're going to a relative's house that doesn't have a bed. We can try to request a bed and a mattress from there. So that's really helpful.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So talking about working with the child placing portion at KVC and what information that we give them and how they receive information for both planned and emergency removals. We have a document called a placement communication form that is entered when KVC is aware of a move, either emergency or planned. This tells KVC's admissions and CPA teams to start looking for a new placement. The forms are sent out to potential placement providers on a daily basis. Information on this placement communication form include children's needs, educational, physical, mental health, developmental, preferred location, if they can room share, if they have siblings, any risks that they may have, strengths of the child, favorite activities, the reason for the move, their daily rate of pay, their level of care, and what day we need moved. And we also do these forms for if a child needs respite. So if they just need a temporary placement, if their placement isn't like needs to leave town or something, or just needs a break. So stats about where my kids, the adoption case plan kids are placed. Kids can be placed anywhere in Kansas, and through an ICPC, they can be placed anywhere in the United States. Though it is preferable for them to remain in their home county of Douglas County, that is not always possible. There are not nearly enough foster homes. I wish that there were. So permanency, they have a goal for relative placements. Our goals are relative placements are preferred as placements and adoptive resources. We try to do a lot of family finding to find interested relatives. If the children are older teens, it's often really helpful for them to reach out to relatives KVC may have missed. This is honestly extremely helpful when they can do that, because I personally have a case where this has happened and we were able to place the child with a relative, and it's great. We expanded our kinship team in 2019, so more relative efforts could be completed. We do more thorough family finding, and it's been really beneficial for our kids. I don't have stats as to how many kids are currently in relative placements that are in the adoption team. Furthest away that we have had a child placed.
100 yards, turn right onto South Kazel Drive.
Robin, I don't think you're muted. So personally, I've had kids in Atchison, Baldwin City, Basehor, Burlingame, Columbus, Denison, Eudora, Fontana, Gardner, Goff, Independence, Junction City, Kansas City, Lawrence, Leavenworth, Lenexa, Newton, Olathe, Osawatomie, Overland Park, Salina, Spring Hill, Topeka, Wellington, Wetmore, and Wichita. I'm sure there are other places that I have had kids placed, but they can be placed literally anywhere in Kansas. I would say about 3 hours is probably the farthest that I have personally had a kid placed away from my office in Lawrence. But it's definitely preferred if they can maintain in their home county or nearby. So because kids are often extremely far away, we have to do worker childs every single month. That is required to spend at least 1 hour per month with the kids in their home, preferably. With driving to and from these visits, with kids placed anywhere, this can add up to a significant amount of hours. My hours currently for my caseload are 47.5 hours just driving and doing those 1 hour worker child visits. That is not including other things that I do with my work, like transportation, sibling visits, appointments, case plans, court, extra support, referrals, anything that you can think of. Does KVC have a mechanism for having someone closer to a child's placement helping you with worker child visits and worker placement visits? If that happens, do we still try to make that connection 1 time a quarter or every so often? Normally, no. A worker is required to see all of their kids. During COVID, we were able to have 1 worker who resides in Southeast Kansas start seeing some of our kids in the area. She is currently seeing 1 of my kids in Independence, but I still talk to that child almost weekly. They do just the worker child visit. I handle everything else in that case still, but it's extremely helpful because I don't have to drive to Independence. So I've never helped facilitate MAP training. Adoption workers have been asked in the past to come and speak to the classes, but this is not a regular training that we assist with. Difficult experiences with parents who want to parent their biological children and adoptive children the same. This is definitely two-sided because we do want parents to treat biological children and adoptive children the same, but it is often difficult to explain trauma and how trauma affects kids and the behaviors that may come from that. There are many classes that parents can take to help learn how to better take care of a traumatized child. And often you honestly cannot treat an adoptive child the same way because they won't respond the same way. They won't understand in the same way because they have different life experiences growing up. So services that we have found useful for adoptive parents to parent from a trauma-informed and perspective, any extra classes that they can take are extremely beneficial. There are supports in family therapy, PMTO, which is parent management training, Oregon model, TBRI classes, support groups, books that are recommended, adoption competent therapists, reading the child's file to gain understanding of a child's history. And honestly, talking to the caseworker and sometimes previous placements has been extremely beneficial so that an adoptive parent can fully understand the trauma that a child has been through. The hardest part of my work is the amount of things that need to be done in a limited amount of time. So think just regular things that I do on a regular basis are things like court reports and hearings, case plans, sibling visits, pre-placement visits, respite, making referrals to places like CDDO, SSI, mental health, physical health, education, etc. Medication management and therapy appointments. That includes transportation to those, specialized medical care appointments and transportation to those, teaching life skills, taking youth to OPLA events such as RIAC and Gear Up events, being a support and spending time with kids that need it outside of the 1 hour a month work or child visits. A lot of the kids on the adoption caseload don't have anyone else. So often it's the KVC worker that is the most consistent person in their life. So we try to spend extra time with those kids. Trainings and staffings, emergencies, hospitalizations, either mental or physical health, crisis planning, preparing families and kids for adoption and working through those issues, educational meetings, decision-making, and documentation. Those are just some examples of the things that we do on almost a daily basis. The most enjoyable part of our work, my kids are my favorite part of my work. Being able to be a support for kids that honestly don't have anyone else is very special. I love that we can have one-on-one time with teens. We can be a consistent in their life for a significant amount of time when they don't have anyone else. Seeing kids grow up and be successful with whatever their goals are, and doing adoptions, making new families and growing current ones. Are there adoptive families that stay in touch with you? Yes, they do, and I love it. I love hearing from the adoptive families, and I love being able to see the kids grow up. It's extremely special. Are there advocates that stay in touch with me? Yes, I do. I have the advocates that I have had are still in touch with me, and it's really nice to see them grow up and take on adulthood. It's very nice. The type of boundaries help me with my work. Personal versus work boundaries are extremely important. We have to try as hard as we can to not bring home work and to not let it take too much of your personal life be overtaken by work. Shutting off your phone after 5 if not on call. Getting support from your team, getting extra coverage, and just your team understanding what you're also going through, because everyone's going through the same thing. Trying not to work on weekends, and building respect and relationship with teens. Teens are special creatures, I will say. So making sure that you have boundaries with them and that they have the respect for you that you need is extremely important. Self-care that I have found to be helpful. I really enjoy reading, deep breathing, playing games. Kirsten mentioned she loves yoga, youth group volunteering, games, sand volleyball. Really anything that can kind of keep your mind off of work is extremely beneficial with self-care. What can CASA volunteers do to assist us in our work? CASA volunteers are the most helpful when they come alongside case managers and assist in the areas that I've listed below. They also might have a better bond with the child than a KVC worker who has to play more of a parent and decision-making / bad guy role. I've had CASAs help with driving children to appointments, activities, visits. They spend one-on-one time with the children. They help teach life skills. They are helpful in supporting placement. And CASA is amazing with any funding opportunities for children and families. I love that some of my kids are able to go to horse camp and do summer camp and driver's ed and all of this stuff thanks to CASA. And we really, really appreciate our CASA workers. What can CRB do, volunteers do to help assist us in our work? Kindness, patience, and understanding for the work in this difficult field. Teamwork, spreading out the responsibilities to the child, family, KVC, CASA, GAL, and other professionals involved. A child's case team is not just one person. One person alone doesn't make the decisions for the entire thing. It's really a team effort. Understanding of wait lists, lack of services, and time needed to complete tasks. Wait lists for things like therapy, activities, anything like that can, depending on the time of year, depending on location, wait lists can be months. And it's not that we are not getting children into services, it's that there are no available services. Understanding of children's lack of participation. Being in care is extremely hard for children, and being reminded that they are in care is extremely hard for them as well, especially for our teens, and they try to avoid anything that has to do with KVC or the court and will adamantly deny participating. Realistic orders that can be accomplished. KVC doesn't have unlimited money, for sure. I wish that we did. That would be awesome. Asking sensitive questions to the caseworker before the CRB is great. If you think it might be like oh, should I ask this in front of everyone kind of question, just shoot me an email, shoot the caseworker an email. We are more than happy to answer any questions before the CRB. So roles, some of our roles are like me, adoption specialist / case manager. We are the point of contact for a child's case and the person who is assigned the caseload. We have adoption resource coordinator. They organize recruitment for children who don't have an adoptive resource. One coordinator works with all Johnson and Douglas County cases. QA, quality assurance. They help with adoption packet organization, records requests, and case planning. Documentation. We log a significant amount of what we do with our clients and other parties involved in the child's case. For adoption, we do worker child logs for every child once per month. We also log texts, emails, phone calls, court hearings, appointments, etc. A log can take on average 5 to 10 minutes to complete, depending on the type of log and the detail that will go into it. And we are required to do a minimum of 75 logs per month on the adoption team. Steps to complete adoption. I just wanted to add this in here for you guys so you could have kind of an idea of what we are doing. So it's the adoption family assessment and that paperwork, best interest staffing, file read and pre-placement visits, adoption placement agreement and subsidy, an adjustment period if there is one, and finalization. These steps and the explanations that I will get to are based on an in-state relative or foster parent adoption. And any timeframes that we may give are subject to change on a case-by-case basis. There it goes. So the first step, adoption is family assessment and paperwork. Once an interest is expressed in adopting a specific child, an adoptionist, if you are coming just straight from the website, an adoption assessor will be assigned to complete your adoption family assessment. The assessor, along with the case manager, will assist in completing necessary paperwork and will be required to complete the assessment. Things like background check, employment, income verification, health assessments, and they will complete an adoption packet, which has all of that stuff in it. And the adoption assessor has roughly 60 to 90 days to complete the assessment, which is also known as the home study. And they will meet with the family in the home a minimum of 2 times.
Just to
Then-
add on that one, Chloe, if it is off of the site, you're right, it's that worker. If it is a foster home adopting, then it's their FSC, which is just their foster home worker writing their home study. And then if it's a relative, we contract people as an adoption department to write home studies. So there are kind of 3 groups of people that might adopt, and they all have someone different. That's all I have.
Yes, definitely. The next step after we get the home study, if the home study is approved, we will hold a best interest staffing. Along with the home study, documentation for this will include a child's social history. We hold a best interest staffing in order to select an adoptive family for the child. The child's case team, GAL, if there's CASA involved, will be involved in the best interest staffing, and we kind of get together to determine the best placement and adoptive family for a child. We will make a recommendation at the end of the best interest staffing and submit it to our director and DCF for approval. If a family is not selected as the resource, they'll receive a phone call and a letter. If they are selected as the resource, they will get a call or saying, congratulations. There is a potential to have a best interest staffing waiver if the child has been in the home at least 6 months and there are no major issues that come up in background checks. This is definitely a case-by-case basis and has to be approved by DCF to do the waiver.
And to add on to this one too, Chloe, if the resource does have the option to be in the BIS for just their portion. And as we go over some of the questions that are more pointed for them, they can be there, as well as whoever wrote the home study for them as a support to kind of walk through some of those questions. And then we also invite therapists and just other really good members of the team to go to the in-person BIS if that is something that we are hoping for, or if it's a really tough decision that we have. So, and then you will do recommendations at the end and everyone would get a recommendation.
Yes. Let's see. File read and pre-placement visits. Once a family is selected, they will have the opportunity to read the child's file to get pertinent information like the child's strengths, needs, medical history, mental health history, any sort of history that KVC has in the file, they are able to read. They're not able to keep these documents during this file read. We just go through it with them. And once the child is adopted, they will get a release of information from DCF so they can request any records that they saw in the file read that they might want to have for themselves. If the child, so pre-placement visits. If the child is not already in the home, we will work with the family and the kids to start doing visits. Most of the time, this will happen after the best interest staffing. We want to do several visits in the home before we have a child go live in the home if the child is not already living with you, because that is a big change for a child and a family. So we want to ease everyone into that. Once we have the file redone, we will submit paperwork to DCF, and DCF will come with an adoption placement agreement. And at the same time, DCF will negotiate and will present an adoption assistance subsidy, and we will sign all of that paperwork. And the adoption assistance subsidy is based on the needs of the child and can vary. After APA, the adoption placement agreement is signed, there could be 6 months of an adjustment period before a consent to finalize the adoption will be given by DCF. If the child is not in the home prior to the adoption placement agreement, there will definitely be a longer adjustment period, anywhere between 6 weeks and 6 months. After adoption placement agreement is signed, if the child was not placed in your home that day, the child will be placed in your home.
Chloe,
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is a fair question, but what is the range of adoption subsidies you have seen as an adoption specialist, or are you aware of those?
So adoption subsidies can range anywhere from 0 to, I believe, $500. If a child is getting Social Security, we can match that rate as well.
And what kinds of needs have you seen for a child that receives that much subsidy?
Developmental delay, physical delays and illness. If a child has, if there's a parental history of like significant issues and needs, if a child is being adopted in a sibling set of more than 2 children, pretty much any sort of need that a child may have, we take into consideration, therapeutically, medically, educationally, everything like that. And DCF is the one that comes up with that number.
Thanks, Chloe.
Yes. I didn't put a title on this one. So for finalization, legal consents have to be obtained in order for the child to be released from DCF, and an adoption hearing will be scheduled to complete the adoption with the family. We will submit a request for consent to DCF, and DCF will send that back and send an attorney packet to the adoption attorney, and we will be able to schedule a hearing and have that. KVC provides 6 months of aftercare services to assist with the transition. In addition, the families are given information about the Kansas Post-Adoptive Resource Center, and that offers support groups, retreats, and additional post-adoption support.
Chloe,
And that is my, yes, ma'am.
how much interaction with or knowledge do you have about that post-adoption resource center?
Personally, I don't have a lot of knowledge about it.
Okay,
Kirsten, what about you?
I don't have a ton of knowledge. That's just, I know the state of Kansas is trying to get better in general about post-adoption support. There just isn't a ton, but of what we do have, K-Park has continually provided books and all kinds of things, and they continually supply us with an entire bag of things and resources to give families when they finalize. So we rely on them for different trainings, again, kind of some of those support groups, books, and really getting connected with one another, because we have heard that that's really the best kind of support that families are wanting post-adoption.
okay, awesome. Thanks so much. I did have one question come in via text during the presentation, and that was for the KVC warehouse. What kinds of donations do you accept from the community?
New and gently used items are definitely accepted.
And if there's people in Douglas County associated with CASA or CRB that want to donate or to work with an organization that they're part of to donate, who would our contact be at the local KVC office or in Kansas City, if that's more appropriate?
I can get you that information.
That'd be great.
We have a guy in Douglas County, and I am completely blanking on his name, but I can get you that information for sure.
I just love that you could say, I have a guy. I have a guy, right? Awesome. Does anybody else want to unmute and ask questions? I'll try to enlarge my view of who's on to see if anybody's unmuted, or you could just,
This is Linda. I've unmuted.
thank you.
Okay, I had a question. I know that there's a way to get kids' pictures and everything out to that are up for adoption, but there's two things that seem hard to figure out, and that's how does a family decide which child they would like to adopt, or is that not decided? They just put their name in as an adoptive resource, and then they look at the children, and then a best interest staffing's done, and then they read the file? I mean, how do they get information on the children before they put their name in the hat? That's it.
So if a person reaches out, so purely if just a family, not a foster family, just a family is interested in adoption, they can go to our Adopt Kansas Kids and our KVC websites to see the children that are available for adoption. They can request that information be sent to them, and they will be given kind of a short blurb of information about the child and their needs. Nothing extremely invasive, but a realistic view of what kids' needs are, diagnoses that they may have, age, if they have any siblings, information like that. And if they decide that they are interested in that, we will do a phone call, and they will give KVC, like KVC will send them a form to fill out with their information, and the KVC worker, will go through it and see if it would be a potential match. And if KVC believes that it would be, then we set up a phone call or two, and just go into detail about the kids' needs and their time in custody and kind of who the child is. We can do releases of information so that if a family is still interested after the phone call, they can talk to a child's therapist or a child's current placement and have that information and make determinations from there. If at that point they still want to move forward, then KVC would request that a home study be completed if there was not one done already. If there is one done, depending on if a family is a foster family or just a regular family, we would then start this process that I just went through.
Okay, so that's all done before the assessment, all of that exchange of information.
So once a family inquires on the site, their home study is sent to the case manager to be reviewed to see if that would even be a good fit. And if it would, then all of that starts.
Okay, I got that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good question. It's a confusing process. And to clarify on that too, our families that are not licensed foster homes would always have to read the file. They'd have to go to the best interest staffing, and the whole team would select to move forward with this option and then read the file before ever meeting the child. There are some situations where that can be worked around, but if they don't have any familiarity with the child, they must read the file and understand the child's needs before ever meeting them, just because we've had some fall through and now there's no way around that. They have to kind of see what they're getting into and what that child has been through before ever making contact.
Thanks so much for those questions and clarification.
Heather, this is Becky Forschler. I have a question for Chloe.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, hi, Chloe. I was just wondering if you could explain to our group a little bit more about what is happening with the Adopt Kansas Kids and videos that they're making on some of the adoptable kids. And I'll sign off now.
Yes. So some of our kids are getting extra support from Adopt Kansas Kids, and we do videos with them, interviews with them, do more in-depth profiles with them. Adopt Kansas Kids is a great resource. I have a child that we're going to go to the Humane Society next week and shoot a video, and I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions and they'll answer them. And we are able to share this video on the adoption website and on our Facebook page. A video is often much more helpful in seeing who a child is versus a picture and some words on a screen. We want people to see kids, as people, and not just pictures.
I'm not going to say you planted that question, but I have a feeling Becky knew what the answer was when she asked. So.
I have a feeling she knew that too.
Not 100%, but I am aware that some videos are being made. Yes, thank you. And thank you, Chloe, for the more explanation.
Is there anyone else who wants to unmute and ask some questions? So Chloe, I have a couple things that we could fill in. There's a couple of the resources for your children with APLA case plans that you referenced. And I think on a case-by-case basis, as we come across them, we remind people about them. But since we have this time set aside, could you talk a little bit about what the RIAC is?
Yes, so RIAC is the Regional Youth Advocacy Center. RIAC has, I'm trying to think. They set up activities and not like trainings, but meetings with kiddos who are older, and often people in the community. One RIAC event that I went to recently had a speaker from a physical health center where they do classes for like CNA and all of that kind of stuff. And we went through that information and how you would sign up for that and where those are located and health career options, and preparing yourself for adulthood is pretty much what these events are about. And there are different events throughout the year. Some are on budgeting, transportation, different types of jobs, things like that. When kids want to go to these, I think it's extremely beneficial.
Great. And then you also mentioned Gear Up.
Yes, so Gear Up is through Wichita State. It is a program that kids can be involved in to help prepare themselves for college. They will get a Gear Up worker who can help them with things like applying for scholarships, exploring colleges, preparing for the ACT, help filling out the FAFSA. There's a Gear Up scholarship that exists that's helpful. Gear Up really helps try to keep things in line for kids, especially if they bounce around, and make sure that they are getting the credits that they need in order to graduate.
Speaking of which, I was curious, and I know there's permanency case managers in the same sort of situation, but how has it been working with APLA kids if they have to move placements and working on their high school credits? I'm curious if you've seen any like what I have a dream that the state of Kansas would have one online provider that kids in foster care could at least have a safety net to fall back on, and all the schools would have to accept it. So have you seen anything like that? I know a case we had a school where the child moved, let them continue on online with their old school or something along those lines. I think, you know, COVID had the silver lining for some education components in that we learned if a kid can't get to school online is better than no school for most kids. So I just was curious what your experience had been.
Yes, so 2020, the 2020 or 2019, 2020 and 2020-21 school year were not the best. But they did allow kids who were bouncing or who were staying in the office a lot to do school online, and able to stay with their homeschool regardless of where they were. And that was extremely beneficial. Unfortunately, for the 2021-2022 school year, the state of Kansas has determined that the school could only have so many days of online learning. So kids are no longer allowed to do that. If they're not in one placement, they cannot be enrolled in a school. Such as if a kid doesn't have a placement and they're staying in our Olathe office during the day, they're not allowed to enroll in Olathe schools because they're not placed there.
Mhm.
So it's been extremely, extremely difficult. And it's extremely unfortunate. I would love if Kansas would have an online opportunity like that. I know there's K-12 and things like that in different districts, but they are extremely slim in their admittance, and they have a really strict policies on attendance. So if a child has too many absences, for whatever reason, they often will not accept them into online learning.
Thanks so much. I don't know that this is the best time, but I would just put out there for CASA and CRB volunteers as they consider that. And if they have contact with their legislators on any matters, that might be something worth asking their legislators about. Anybody else want to unmute and submit a question orally today?
Hello. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Excellent. I heard a little bit about how adoptive families will receive some kind of financial support. Is there anything, it sounds like sometimes this is an older child being adopted. Is there anything for the child themselves, like anything that goes into a bank account specifically for the child?
Great question.
That is a good question. There's not. Not unless the adoptive family wants to put that subsidy into a bank account for the child.
However, Chloe, tell me if I'm wrong, because then we'll have to talk about the case. It's not yours. There is a case in which Craig Stancliffe is the guardian ad litem, and there's a NR-KIN placement, and they're waiting till after the child is 16 to complete the adoption, which opens up.
I can't believe I didn't put that in my slides. I'm so sorry.
We'll let you add it. And
Yes, so once a child is 16, there are a lot more opportunities open for them regarding their benefits after they are adopted. They have access to more college funds through DCF in the state of Kansas. So, and our kids who age out can basically go to a 4-year college for free. And it is awesome if the kid is doing what they need to do. And aging out comes with a whole slew of benefits itself through DCF. I will add slides for that and send it in because it is way too much for me to try to remember off the top of my head. I apologize.
that's okay. That's great. And just because we were talking adoption and you segued to APLA, are those the same college benefits for kids adopted after age 16 as a child aging out? Put you on the spot.
They are the same, but you are getting a lot more aging out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All of the startup costs for apartments and a variety of things like a one-time vehicle repair and some of those things. But the college is the same, we think.
Yes, after they're 16.
Okay, great. Whoever asked that
We have
question.
we have a couple little charts, and that is one of them we can send you. We just approved one that has the adoption process in just in little bubble form to pass out to families, and you guys can have a copy of that. I think is really helpful to just understand all the language that we use. And then there are forms from DCF just exactly on all of that benefit information, because it gets very confusing. So those are all forms we can pass along for you guys to have too.
Perfect. Those would be awesome. Again, I want to thank Chloe and Kirsten for their time and for putting together this PowerPoint and the additions that will be added to it. And then I will send that to the CASA staff as well. I will put it out on the Go Drive for CRB volunteers in our current year handouts for trainings. And I'll let you know when the recording is available. We have just a couple of minutes before we are scheduled to sign off. Anybody else want to unmute and ask a question? Sort of the going, gone sort of opportunity. So thank you again. I did take a snip of our participants, but if you want to make sure you get credit for that, feel free to email your volunteer supervisor. And I do have plans, not shared widely at this point, but these have been very well received, as you guys see from the people who are here, and we've already had people watch the recordings of our other sessions. We're looking at doing follow-up with the child placing department, and I'm still sort of teasing out where admissions falls in that, because they're mentioned a lot together. And then also I've been in discussion with Caroline Crawford, and she's gonna push that request up to a supervisor for outpatient services with KVC. So look forward to something else along those lines before the end of 2022. So thank you all for attending. Thanks again to our presenters. Be careful if you go outside today. I hear it's getting hot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Happy early holidays, all.
Thank you.